Hello everyone and welcome back into another edition here of the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. My name is Christopher Shepard. Thank you all for tuning in for our midweek show, and it should be a good one. As always, kicking things off with our midweek NBA Power Rankings back after the All-Star break. We're continuing talking about the MLB a little bit, a couple of hot stove rumors heading into spring training now that it's fully getting into swing, and also doing our MLB power rankings as well. And then we mix in some football from both sides of the pond, starting off with a segment about how certain teams through the draft can build like the Philadelphia Eagles, and looking at how certain players in this year's draft fit certain prototypes of Philadelphia Eagles players. So I thought that would be really cool. And then concluding with a big top 6 semi-clash here, because both teams kind of are on the peripheries of the top 6, with Villa going up against Chelsea. But before we get into any of that, I do want to remind you, as always, to like, follow, and subscribe to the show if you haven't done so already. Consider making yourselves available to the Super Chat, Super Thanks, and Super Stickers features here on YouTube. Always a great way to get involved with the show, whether it be through leaving any comments, questions, concerns you have through the show, or tips and donations. Anything you do is generally appreciated. You can also do it through our website, gsmcsportsnetwork.net, and this makes our shows, for that matter, that much better when we are contributing to them. But without further ado, let's just jump right into the first segment of today's show. Gonna be our midweek NBA Power Rankings. Now that we're back from the All-Star break, we are going to be looking at the top 5 teams headed into the stretch run, the true contenders to compete for the Larry O'Brien Trophy, in my humble opinion. And as it goes along, this list could be ever-changing, but I feel like we now know what our top 5 is going to look like going forward. And so without further ado, let's jump right into it, starting off with our number 5 team here, the New York Knicks. Now, the New York Knicks are an interesting team because we all know the Tom Thibodeau formula. In fact, this starting 5 has played 278 more minutes than any other lineup in the league this season, and Brunson is the facilitator of all things concerning that starting 5, for that matter. He's in the top half of the league in terms of time of possession, actually leads the league in terms of time of possession, averaging 8 minutes per game with the ball in his hands, and in clutch usage rate. And him and Jokic are the only 2 players in the NBA right now to be shooting over 50% in the clutch moments. So ultimately, when you have a starting 5 that is reliable and a player who can finish games for you as well as Brunson has, including that last-minute overtime winner against the Atlanta Hawks a couple weeks ago, I feel like anything is possible for this New York Knicks team. However, the one important stat to note here is that they're 0-5 against the top 3 teams in the league, and I feel like that has a lot to do with the Tom Thibodeau formula as well. There are a lot of positive to take away from the Tom Thibodeau formula, and that you feel like you have a starting 5 strong enough to contend with anyone in the league. But if you want to contend for a championship, you got to find some variety to mix it up. And coming out of the All-Star break, to make matters worse, they play, I believe, 2 of the top 3 teams in the league, and 11 of 14 of their next games on the road. So it's going to be a tough road to hoe for the New York Knicks coming up in the weeks ahead, because of the fact that, like I said, the Tom Thibodeau formula can work, but will it work against the top teams when it matters? So that's why the Knicks are still in my top 5, but not quite in the top 3 just yet. And in terms of a team that could steadily drop out of the top 5 altogether, how about the Memphis Grizzlies? This is a team that's lost 2 of its last 3, but I do like a lot of things about it. And I feel like this team wants to set the tempo. They want to get out in transition, utilize both Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr.'s abilities. In fact, they average 34.2 transition points per game, and they are amongst the top 7 most fast-paced teams in the league. But I do feel that they are a team that, to me, is too Morant and Jackson centric, and I feel like that could come back to bite them in certain moments. And this Memphis team, not to say that they're slowly declining in the rankings of the Western Conference, but I feel like now they can't make up enough ground to where they can keep this thing close with OKC at the top of the Western Conference. They're still on the periphery, I think, of being a solid team come postseason time, but I don't believe that this team is gonna be good enough in the postseason if certain players in this roster don't step up. So that's why Memphis is kind of hanging on precariously in these rankings as of this moment. They have a chance to get back into the swing of things. They do play their first 3 games after the All-Star break against the top seven East teams, and anything can happen there. They're not necessarily that good against the upper cream of the crop in the Eastern Conference. So that's what I worry about for Memphis going ahead. But they still find themselves in the thick of the Western Conference standings, upper half, and anything can happen down the stretch for them. They just need to play within themselves. Then at number 3, a team that quickly ascend up the rankings to maybe as high as number 1 here, the Boston Celtics have won 8 of their last 9. 3 games left against the Knicks, a team that they have had their number against. They're the only team, actually, that first stat was now wrong, and we'll get to why in a matter of minutes. But they are the only team in the league that ranks in the top 5 on both ends of the floor, and also in every aspect of offense. They can score in the paint, they can score in the mid-range, and they can score from the three-point line. This Celtics team is not, Joe's 3-ball, live and die philosophy anymore. This is a very variable team, and what I mean by that is they have the players on the interior, they have the players on the perimeter to really threaten you, and that's why they're finally getting into the swing of things, really becoming the team we expected them to be this season. And they're actually underperforming in terms of win expectation, and that just goes to show that this team can even amp it up ever more. And they have one of the easiest schedules left in the NBA. So that's why Boston can certainly find itself in the coming weeks atop these power rankings. And especially when you consider the fact that the East is definitely not necessarily the deeper conference. So if they can continue to win the game they need to and prove that their wins against the Cavaliers and the Knicks before the All-Star break weren't flukes, then this Boston team certainly has merit to it and can certainly be one of the teams to challenge OKC at the top. But I still have Cleveland above them just in terms of record and because they're also in good form. They won 7 of their last 8, and I feel like they are such an elite team because they have this tempo about them where they don't necessarily speed things up too much, but they also have that within them. They can find the matchups they like and exploit you from there because only 21.5% of their points come from the fast break and in transition. That's really impressive for a top team. And what I really like about this Cavs team as well is because they really found a nice perimeter threat in Darius Garland, but Evan Mobley gives them an opportunity to stretch the floor as well. And because him and Donovan Mitchell are so fascinating driving to the rim, that's what allows the perimeter threat to be even more potent. And don't forget that Darius Garland is such an elite passer as well. So all those different things combine to make the Cleveland Cavaliers a dangerous team at the top of the East. They have 3 games left against the Knicks, and those 3 games could potentially be the difference in how they're viewed headed into the postseason, because if they win all 3, go 2-1, then they have a chance to be viewed as a team that could meet Boston and challenge them in the Eastern Conference Finals and beyond in the NBA Championship for whoever represents the West. But for now, this Cleveland Cavaliers team needs to take care of business and focus on making sure that when those 3 games against the Knicks come, they don't crack under pressure. But everyone right now is still looking up at the OKC Thunder at the top of the rankings. They're actually coming off a loss. Their only second double-digit loss of the season to the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I feel like I don't necessarily view that as something to worry about if you're an OKC Thunder fan. And I feel like this Thunder team really has grown into a tough team where, because they haven't really lost many games badly, you're going to get their best shot when you face them again. They never lose to the same team twice. They never go on these epic losing streaks where you find concern for them. In fact, they're 12-7 in games they've trailed by double digits. But the one concern, if I am an OKC Thunder fan, is that 5 of their first 6 games post All-Star break are on the road. So OKC is going to have to become road warriors down the stretch and prove that they can continue to keep this pace of winning games and not necessarily find themselves in a rut to maintain their number 1 status. But let me know what you think in the comments below, because this rankings could be ever changing in the coming months, but I feel like the top 5 has become a little bit more solidified over the past several weeks. But coming up next, we'll be transitioning to the world of MLB yet again, talking about some hot stove rumors that could concern certain teams and certain position groups as spring training gets fully underway. We'll be right back to talk about it after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.